They said I was too stuck in the past. So the new boss's daughter fired me. No notice, no handshake. Just a security escort and a smirk. But while she inherited her father's office, she didn't inherit his wisdom. Because years ago, Charles Harper made me a promise and put it in writing. She erased me like I was disposable. What she didn't realize was that I helped build the very contract that could now bring her entire empire to a stop. And that's when everything quietly began to shift. They didn't even give me a proper goodbye. 18 years just gone in an instant. I walked into the Monday morning operations meeting expecting the usual rundown. Instead, I found Vanessa Harper, 28, heels too high for the factory floor, already sitting at the head of the table. Her voice was clipped, her words rehearsed. "Stanley, we appreciate your contributions, but we're moving in a different direction." That was it. No handshake, no thank you speech, just a printed memo and a junior HR rep escorting me out like I was a liability. I passed faces I had mentored for over a decade, some of them too stunned to meet my eyes. The same people I'd trained, defended, and fought to keep employed during the worst of the 2008 downturn. I carried my things in a single cardboard box. Photo of my late wife, Linda, and a wrench Charles once gave me after a 24-hour emergency shutdown. That wrench meant more than any plaque they'd ever offered. They said I was resistant to change. What they meant was, I remembered how quality used to matter. But as I stepped into my truck, something hit me. Vanessa may have fired me without warning, but she didn't realize her father left me one thing she'd never read. A clause that could bring her plans to a halt. The signs had been there for months. I just didn't want to see them. New faces at management meetings, young, polished, and utterly unfamiliar with our floor operations. Weekly reports I used to review stopped landing in my inbox. Budget decisions got made without a single word to me. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but when Vanessa started calling our team legacy overhead, I knew something was coming. Still, I didn't complain, didn't push back. Instead, I cleaned up my files, printed out system diagrams I'd drawn by hand years ago. And I went home every night, made a cup of tea, and updated one very specific folder, titled Contingency. You see, when Charles Harper promoted me 16 years ago, he made me sign a separate agreement. It was simple. If I ever got fired without cause, the company owed me 2 full years of salary. At the time, he said it was just in case someone forgets what you're worth. Vanessa never asked about that file. She assumed firing me was just another line item on a spreadsheet. But she didn't check the fine print her father insisted on. And that oversight? It wasn't just expensive. It would become the first crack in her carefully built empire. 3 days after I left, I got a message. It wasn't from Vanessa, it was from Kyle, a maintenance supervisor I'd mentored years ago. He simply wrote, "Stan, something's off. They're rerouting system orders manually. Production's a mess." I logged into my home archive system. Nothing fancy, just a secured mirror backup I'd kept for just in case. What I saw: sloppy edits, overwritten safety protocols, purchase orders for replacement parts that made no sense. One vendor caught my eye: Bright Core Solutions. We'd never used them before, no website, just a P.O. box in Florida. I traced payments totaling over $90,000, all authorized in the last 6 weeks. And the approval chain, Vanessa, and someone I never expected. Mason Rivera, our junior procurement officer. I'd trained that kid. He used to ask me how to spell solenoid. This wasn't modernization, it was a quiet bleed. Someone was funneling money under the radar through fake vendors and covering it with new efficiency initiatives. I forwarded the logs to my attorney and called Jennifer, our former quality control head. Her response chilled me. They're cutting QA inspections by 40%. She says it's to streamline operations. That's when I knew. This wasn't just incompetence, it was intentional sabotage, and it was about to collapse. I didn't storm into Harper Machinery demanding answers. I called my lawyer, Harold Preston, the same day I finalized the evidence packet. Inside was everything. The fake vendor invoices, internal emails authorizing unverified purchases, a timeline showing how Vanessa bypassed legacy safeguards. Harold read it, whistled softly, and said, "She's not just reckless, this is textbook fraud." We filed an emergency claim with the board. No press, no public blow-up, just a quiet message sent to the people who actually cared about numbers. 3 days later, I got the call, not from Vanessa, from Charles. His voice was strained. "Stanley, can you come to my house tonight?" That evening, I sat across from him and 2 board members, retired but still influential. Charles looked me in the eye and said, "I made a mistake. She's bleeding the company. We want to know if you'd consider coming back." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slid a flash drive across the table. "This is everything. Use it if you want the truth, not just a reset." They opened the files. Their faces told me all I needed to know. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. 2 weeks later, I stepped into the same conference room where Vanessa had fired me. This time it was different. She wasn't at the head of the table. Charles was flanked by the board, holding a printed agreement. On paper, it was a merger. In reality, it was a rescue. Cornerstone Precision would absorb Harper's custom machinery division. And I would lead it. I didn't give a speech. I simply nodded and shook Charles's hand. His grip was weaker than I remembered, but his eyes were grateful. We rebuilt quietly. Jennifer returned to quality control. Thomas designed our first new prototype in 3 weeks. Jason trained 2 young hires who reminded me of myself 30 years ago. We didn't chase headlines, we chased purpose. And Harper Machinery? It didn't disappear, it evolved, honoring the past while building a future rooted in craft and care. One afternoon, Charles stood beside me on the production floor. He said, "You weren't just operations, Stanley, you were the soul of this place." I looked around at the humming machines, the focused workers, the rhythm of something reborn. Maybe he was right, because sometimes when you're cast aside, the best revenge is rebuilding. So well they wish they had never let you go. I never set out to prove anything. I just wanted to be respected for the years I gave, the systems I built, the people I trained, and when that respect was taken, I didn't scream. I built something better. If you've ever been cast aside because you were too old, too slow, or too stuck in your ways, you're not alone. Experience isn't outdated. It's just undervalued until the day it's gone. So if this story felt familiar, drop 3 words in the comments. I stayed ready. Because dignity doesn't need a microphone, it just needs a moment. And if you think this chapter was finished, wait until you hear about the retired mechanic in Pennsylvania who turned a foreclosure notice into a neighborhood revolution. That story's next.